Hi there, this is my project proposal. So the story for my game is pretty simple. While testing out a new warp drive technology, a ship full of maybe 200 to 300 crew were shot across the universe to a deep part of space that is unexplored. They find themselves lost in space, as it were. Not entirely lost, they do know the way home, but it is going to take a long time. So the idea is that they must stop off periodically throughout the journey to top up their resources in order to be able to make the journey home. So here's a quick mock-up of the map. As you can see on the left there, the ship is that's where it starts. There are lots of orange dots in the middle. Those are suns, and all the little dots around them are is the solar system that rotates around that sun. The end point is Earth, and players must hop from system to system in order to make it back home, basically. First, I want to talk a little bit about the user interface and what I wanted to do. So initially my idea was that players would operate what they see on screen using their mobile phone. So that's where the idea started off, and so really over time it has turned into pretty much exclusively a mobile phone game, although I do have a vision later on for possibly adding in what is effectively Playlink technology, which I'll talk about in a bit, to make this game a lot more spectacular than it would be if it was just a mobile phone game. So here's a mock-up of the main screen. As you can see, the icons are not labelled or anything, they are just icons. I believe that they are self-explanatory, and that's kind of the point. I want to be able to keep as much noise off of the interface as possible. I think people should be able to look at these icons and understand what they are. If not on first glance, maybe once they've clicked on it and had a little look inside, oh, of course that is medical, oh, of course that is for crew members, oh, that is navigation, oh, that's communications, these sorts of things you'll be able to figure out very, very quickly, if not straight away. So here's some mock-ups of screens that I have designed. This screen would show you the levels of each resource that you have. So as you can see, there's food, water, plant life, metals, oils and crystals. These are things that the ship will need to function and carry on going forward. Obviously food and water are essential for keeping the crew alive. This is a mock-up of the screen that the player would use to send crew members on away missions. They're going to be essential for gathering resources. This is a mock-up of the map screen from a galactic point of view. So the map will have 3 different levels, and you'll see in a moment what I mean by that. So this is the first level. It's a full-on galactic view. You can see the solar systems there, and the player would select each solar system and determine which one it is that they want to travel to based on the resources that are on their ship. So for example, if you were to travel to a solar system, you can then scan the planets and see what sort of resources are there. So on a galactic scale you would get a brief outline. Oh, it's high in plant life, might be high in water too. We're getting readings of metals as well. So then you opt to go there. The solar system map would look something like this. You would click on each planet. The planet there you can see is displayed at the top, with the name, the class, threat level, which is something that I'll go into in a moment, and you can scan around to see which planet that it is that you want to travel to, because the entire time there will be a timer in the top, and those resource levels that you would see will constantly drop, so the player must not waste time. So once the player goes into orbit of the planet, they'll be able to do a more detailed scan. The planet that you can see here is obviously going to be heavy in water. It's therefore going to have quite a bit of plant life. It's low on oils, metals and crystals. So obviously this planet is a choice if players are low on food and water. If you do a click on each individual resource, then it would bring up a more broken down version of what metals, for example, as you can see here, are on the planet. So ships, as I've researched, need aluminium, titanium, lithium and gold to function. Well, that's what they're built out of. So obviously this planet is not very rich in metals, but it does have a bit of aluminium. So if you needed to top up your aluminium supplies, then this might be the planet that you might go to. So next is a screen that would show what the communications would potentially look like. There are some mock-ups that I've done of missions. So far this game is just pure survival, get from one end of the map to the other. But there may also be some moral and ethical dilemmas thrown in there as well, and that's what the communication screen would be used for. So I spoke about it a little bit before, iconography. This is very important, I believe, for a mobile phone game. You need to be able to not have too much noise on the phone. You don't want to have labels under absolutely every button, because it takes time to read it. And again, it's just noisy. It just fills up the screen with unnecessary mess. So if you can use symbols that people understand pretty much straight away, then you're onto a winner as far as I'm concerned. So I looked into different icons that we can use. You've probably seen some of them already on the mock-ups that I've shown, but here's a small scattering of the symbols that I looked into. If you can name them all, I'll be very happy. Maybe leave a comment in this, maybe. Okay, so let's talk about resources. So the resources in this game will be broken up into different categories. So you've got food, you've got water, you've got plant life, you've got metals, you've got oils, and you've got crystals. These things are needed to keep the crew alive and to keep the ship functioning. Each group, well not all the groups, 4 out of the 6 groups I should say, have subcategories. So within food you have proteins, carbohydrates, fats, fruits and vegetables. Within the plant life you can see you've got vegetables, sugars, seeds, herbs and spices and aloe plants. And in the metals you've got aluminium, titanium, lithium and gold. I've not added lithium into that list yet on the mock-up that you can see. So these resources need to be topped up continuously throughout the game. It's a race against those resources running out. That's your timer. If food runs out, for example, then you will have a maximum of, I think, 2 weeks or so on the main timer before the crew are pretty much all dead. Some will die before that, because that is a relatively maximum time that a person can survive without food. Water is you can only survive about 2 to 3 days, so that must be kept topped up. Things like metals, oils, crystals might not be used up at as high a rate, but the crystals, for example, are used to power the warp drive. So I might have it that the crystals deplete only when at warp, but they might deplete pretty quick. This is all something that I would need to test later on. So I talked a little earlier about the map. So here's the main map. This is the galactic map. You can see the start, you can see the end, you can see where the ship is, and you can see all of the systems in between the start and the finish. So I think that this would probably work work best as a procedurally generated map. I don't think that it's practical to tailor this. I think that it's good for randomization each time the player plays as well. But basically the idea is that the players will hop from system to system in order to get back home. I looked into other maps like this one. This is a map of exoplanets that have been discovered. They're is a distinct lack past the sort of 10,000 light year mark. It's obviously because we haven't quite looked that far yet, but this is a good example of what I would like the map to actually look like within the game. If possible, I would very much like the map to have this kind of a function, to be able to look at it in a 3D way. I would also like the map itself to actually be 3D as opposed to 2D, but we'll see what's possible later down the road. So once the player clicks on the solar system of their choice and warp there, they will be presented with this map, or a map similar to this. So once they click on a planet, it'll bring up the resource count, as you saw earlier, and it will help the player determine whether they want to travel to that planet or to another planet. So here you can see when they travel into orbit of the planet, they will be able to run a scan on the planet, which will reveal all of the away missions that the crew can go on in order to gather resources. As you can see, each away mission has threat levels. So obviously if you send someone on a green mission, or a crew on a green mission I should say, then it's very likely that there's not many resources there, but that they will come back safe, that they won't come back with injuries. So when moving around the solar system, it wouldn't be utterly terrible if it looked something like Mass Effect 2. And as much as I've heard a lot of criticism about the mining satellites within this game, I do think that there is something to be had here, and that with a little bit of tweaking it could be made better. So as you can see, the probe going down to the planet, the resources are being filled up. This is pretty much exactly what I want for the away missions. However, I want crew members to physically go down to the planet, and for them to potentially run into issues while they're down there, communicate with the ship, and ask for orders and guidance from the captain, i.e. the player. So there'll be a lot more interactivity than just shooting up over a planet and having your resources fill. Also, this isn't for a crafting reasons, so you're not just trying to collect X amount of a resource, you're trying to collect as much of a resource as you can, because it is constantly depleting, again, especially something like food. So here are some ideas that I've had for the random encounter away missions. So most away missions, the crew would go down, they would mine for a little bit with whatever resource that they're trying to get, and then they would come back up, and that would add X amount of resources to your stockpile on the ship. So feel free to give this a pause and take a look. I also have versions of these on my website, so you can go and check them out there. These are the random encounters that I want players to be running into. So most of the time when they send crew on away missions, they would just go down, gather the resource, bring it back up, and then it would be added to the stockpile, and that's that. And then you'd move on to the next planet. Some planets may be inhabited though, or there may be some kind of encounter with a ship or something like that, and the player is forced to make a moral or ethical decision that may affect morale in the crew, or it may affect your resource levels. So medical. This is quite a big one. So when crew members are injured, they come back up to the ship and they go straight into the medical bay. On the left there you can see that would be the medical bay. There would be a list of crew members and their injuries and the severity of that injury. So the timer, you can see, would be constantly working its way down, and if that injury is not treated within that time, then it gets worse. And if it's not treated within, a certain amount of time, that person may die or be taken out of action permanently. So obviously you're going to have to prioritize which order to fix crew members. What also may weigh in on that is who they are and what their professions are, but that's a moral and ethical decision for the player. So as you can see on the right there, when you click on a crew member to fix or treat, I should say, their details are put down, and the player will have to determine which treatment to use and apply that to the injured crew member. So here's where I want to talk about the Playlink and the wider vision that I have for this game. So I'll play this short clip from the Playlink video. It explains what it is, what it does, and partly what I think it could mean for the future of gaming.
You know it's going to blow up on me. I knew that was going to happen.
From new ways to play classic games to all new experiences, Playlink is Sony's new way to game using your smartphone as the PlayStation controller. Here's everything you need to know. In Playlink, you can investigate murders and strap a bomb to your mate as you both plummet to Earth and pretend to be in the Planet of the Apes. But
you can do that in any
we're
game.
getting ahead of ourselves.
This is
Let's
not
rewind the
mechanics.
clock back
I'm
to
not interested in this.
2017.
I'm interested in mechanics.
Playlink was first introduced during Sony's pre-conference E3 livestream. Its purpose is to make console gaming more social by making smartphones the controllers as a way of getting as many people playing as possible.
Absolutely.
While
everybody has a
single player is
smartphone
an
in their
option, up to
pocket.
8 players
Not
can sit
everybody
on the
has a
sofa in
controller
seamless
or enough
multiplayer
controllers
game,
for all their
including
friends.
non-gamer pals who aren't familiar with more complex DualShock controls. In
Yep.
fact, using your smartphone as a controller opens up a world of possibilities. Drawing, swiping, tilting, and your camera create more interesting gameplay mechanics beyond Mash X and Hold R2. Plus, your smartphone functions as a second screen, allowing secret messages and missions to be sent to you by the game. It's up to you to act natural, though.
So, right, we don't need to look into the games. So, yeah, as you can see by this mock-up here, I really like the idea of operating the ship with your phone and having no UI on the screen, on the TV screen whatsoever. So that is purely a cinematic experience for people to watch. Be like, wow, that looks really nice, without having all of the mess on the screen, you know, like ammo counts and shields and stuff like that. So with having that main screen and having everything function on your phone, when you hit that warp button to go to a new system, I would like for it to be something like this.
Warp drive, Mr. Scott.
Okay, that's enough of that. As much as I love watching this.
Warp 1, engage!
So who are the target audience? Well, people like me, nerds. Specifically Star Trek nerds. People who are interested in things like Battlestar Galactica, Sequest DSV, although I'm showing my age by saying those shows' names. The target audience is hopefully a lot wider with the idea of this Playlink technology. Or at least making it accessible through playing it on a mobile phone. Making a game for a console or a PC is great and everything, but if you make a niche game for those markets, then you're going to find that your market shrinks even more. So if you can open that market up by making it a lot more accessible, then you stand a better chance of that game being successful. So as much as I do want to market my game more or less specifically to nerds, the idea really is to bring in other people to function as crew members within this game. So where do nerds hang out? Well, Facebook pages, geek hangout spots, comic book shops, nerdy coffee shops, things like that. These places will all be the sorts of places which are best to advertise in. I find that the little cards are brilliant to pick up along your way. They go straight in your pocket. You don't tend to throw them out as long as the artwork on them is very, very nice. They'll end up getting stuck to something. They got stuck to the side of my PC, for example. So yeah, littering these places with little cards or leaflets or something to that degree about your game is probably the best way to get people to download it off the internet, because otherwise you're banking on people seeing that advert on the internet. And as much as I do think that internet advertising works, I think that there is a lot to be said for physical advertisement. So what sort of advert appeals to them? Well, probably something action-packed, but also something that just shows beautiful cinematic shots of space and satellites, planets, suns. Anything like that is enough to get some geeks' blood pumping, for sure. Although I do think that there needs to be a thrilling element to any trailer or advertisement in order to get people's attention. So that was my project proposal. Thank you very much for watching, and if you need any more details, they're on my website, which you can find a link for down below.